Good morning and welcome to Tips and Tricks for Advanced SmartList Builder users. Really glad you could join us today. This is going to be a fun session. I'm here presenting with Nicole Albertson again. As you know, she is still the world's foremost expert on SmartList Builder. So you have the very best taking you through what we're going to cover today. We're going to take a slightly different approach today, and we're going to test Nicole, and she's going to expose some of the lists that we use internally at E1. We pride ourselves on using all our own products in our own systems. So Nicole's going to show you some of the things she has built in-house for our team, and you need to take a look at those, learn not to copy her list, but learn the tips and the tricks, and take that home and apply it to the things you need in your business. And that's really why I hope you're here today. SmartList Builder is a tool that you get to use to fit the data you need into your business. There is no out of the box. The whole point of it is it's not out of the box and it's configured for you. So SmartList, which you know and you love, is really good. It's a list of data. Connecting, which we did last week, and showing a new set of data in a list is really cool and a really good start. But I'm sure many of you then take those lists and export them to Excel. And the reason you do that is you like to start formatting that data. You want to put commas in the right place in your dollar symbols, and you want to put the right dollar symbol in the front, and you want to concatenate the first name and the last name, which you know how to do in Excel. There's a whole bunch of things you would do in Excel. We want to help eliminate some of that by showing you how you can format and take a set of data and do more with that. Format it better, have it look exactly how you like, but in SmartList itself through the use of SmartList Builder. So strap on today. If you have a question, please use the questions tab in GoToWebinar. I will endeavor to answer those questions. If I don't know the answer, or I feel it's a question everybody needs the answer to, we'll butt in, we'll interrupt Nicole, and we'll get the answers that you need for that. So that's the session for today. Looking forward to your questions. Glad you could join us. And if you don't, well, you will. You'll end this next hour smarter than you were this morning. So it's going to be a good Wednesday for everybody. Over to you, Nicole. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Okay, well, thank you, Martin. And I'm going to turn off my webcam so you can just see everything that we have on the screen for you. One thing before we get started, last week we had a lot of questions coming in, and that was great, so ask those again. I was happy to answer those. But I had several asking about parameters. When you're running a smart list or even an Excel list, can I have it prompt the user for a filter instead of having them have to go to the search and type in that filter? I wanted to address that because it did come up several times. We cannot do any sort of parameters in SmartList or SmartView. I can't have it prompt the users for a value for, say, a date range or anything like that. That's just not functionality that's built in. We have that feature request for SmartView, just not there today. But when we move to the Excel report builder, and we talked a little bit about that last week, you can actually do parameters there. It's not the easiest thing, and it's not an exact science to do there, but there is a way to do parameters there. And so in the slide deck, which you'll get in the follow-up email, it does have a link to a Tech Tuesday we wrote about doing parameters in Excel Report Builder. And again, it's done in Excel after the fact, but it is an option for you. So I just wanted to address that before we jumped right in. So what I want to jump into is showing you what we do internally, the list that our sales team uses, our support team uses, kind of things that we've created. And then as we do that, we'll walk through some of the different features we used in those different lists. Now, I'm going to our live, well, that's awesome. There it goes. Our live terminal server. So this is in our GP environment. Now I've set it up to use a little bit of test data. Of course, I couldn't expose our live data to you, so it won't look quite right for data, but these are actual lists being used in our live system today. The first one I want to talk about is something our sales team uses, and actually mostly our accountant. When we do things here at E1, we create a project off of any sort of invoice that comes in for an item that needs a project created. So if you purchase a 4-hour support pack, we create a project for those 4 hours so that our support team knows that you have 4 hours left. And of course, we subtract from that as we go through the support process. But I didn't want somebody to have to automatically create that. So we have an automation that runs using Smart Connect that creates that project for us as soon as that invoice is paid. So that's triggering in the back end. But what happens if that integration doesn't run? Then our accountant, what was happening is they were going to post the batch of invoices and that project never got created. Well, then we were missing support hours for people and we can't have that. So to solve that, I created a list for our accountant, and I'm on our terminal server, but I want to show you exactly how our accountant does this. She actually uses SmartView External, which we talked about last week. If you weren't with us, SmartView is E1's replacement for SmartList. A lot more features and stuff that we looked at last week. I'm in the external version, so logged in as a SmartView user, not my GP user. You can see I just flipped from the terminal server back to my desktop. And so I'm going to go here and then run this demo one. Like I said, I had to create them, so they pulled demo data, but sales batch is ready to post. So what we had to solve was, has the project already been created? So I had to know, did a project need to be created? Has it been? And if it hasn't been, how do I know that it hasn't been, right? So that I know my map maybe isn't running, or that integration just hasn't fired yet because it fires every 10 minutes, something like that. So I apologize why this is taking a little bit here. So you can see this is the list she runs right before she posts her batch. And what she's looking for is this first column. So you can see the second column shows me my invoice, shows me the item, the date, all of that information about that invoice, right? But she's looking, is a project created? So it's telling her a project was created or not needed. What she's really looking for is there a blank, right? So she could sort this by blanks. But what happens if we're in that 10-minute span between when it's run and when one needs to be run still, there'll be blanks in here. And she knows if there's a blank, I can't post it yet. So that's what we did. And now to show you how that setup looks, bear with me, we have lots of lists in our system. It's basically just linking on all the sales transaction data. Now, you might be going, hey, Nicole, last week you showed us to use that SmartList table type. Why did you use all these tables? This has been built before we had that SmartList table type. That's how long we've been using this list, and she uses it every Monday just to verify that we don't have any blanks. We actually found a couple weeks ago that our newest accountant didn't even know about this. So for the last year or so, she wasn't looking at this and we were missing projects. So I had to go fix all those projects, but now we've put this back in place. So if you have these types of lists where it's something to set a process in place, make sure when you get a new person, they know about that process. So we learned our own list hadn't even been used, right? So make sure you're documenting that so that as people transfer to new jobs, do that type of stuff, you get it to the people that it's appropriate for as well. But we have on that sales transaction information. course, linked on the item master so that I could get the item name, different things like that. What we're doing to link that invoice to the project is using a little bit of extender. Martin said we use all of our own products, so we have some extender in here. We've created a new window where we can track on the invoice that project that gets created. So we can track that link between the invoice and the project. Now we also put the invoice number on the project, but we're kind of keeping that link together. What I really want to show you is that calculated field. How did I figure out that project number? So if I go into my calculated fields, and I can't really make this bigger, so let me paste it into Notepad for you if it opens. Did I get it? Now I don't even have Notepad on the machine. Okay, well, we'll just go with it the way it is. Hopefully you can read it there. But what we have is just looking at the different setup we have. So our item classes, if they're in prof, which is our professional service, we're gonna go through and then of course look at the stop type. If it's a return, I don't want a project created. So that says delete project because our map actually may have created it. So we want that double check there. So if she sees a delete project as well, she knows to go delete them. We have some self-paced training products. Those don't need a project. You're doing that training on your own. So you can see those excluded out here. Different items getting excluded out of this list, and then and display is going to be goofy coming through our virtual machine here. But so we're kind of walking through our items. Do we need a project or not? If we do, we display that project number we're storing. If it doesn't need one, we display not needed. And again, if it does need one, it hasn't been created, it goes to display that project number, which is blank, so you get a blank. So think of it as not so much we run this list to read any of the data. We don't care what the actual project number is at this point. We don't care about any of that. We're using it as a process. We're looking for blanks. So could we set up a reminder or something like that? Sure. But we really don't want to remind us. She just wants to know right before she's ready to post in her day, which could be any time of day, is there any blanks that I need to be concerned about? So that's why we have this list. We also have one that sales batches posted. She runs as soon as she's done posting, just in case that off chance that that invoice came in while she was posting and the project didn't get created. So in that, 30-second time lapse, did something happen in there, and we don't want to forget that one either. So as soon as she's done posting, she runs the sales batches posted to make sure that she doesn't have any blanks there either.
So just jumping in there a little bit, Nicole, this is a chance for everybody to pause for just a moment and think about what Nicole did. Now, our scenario of choosing batches to post is unique to our business and our scenario. But the concept here is using SmartList and SmartList Builder as a workflow tool. This is the tool that says, what should we be doing next? Should I be doing something based upon clicking on one of these lists inside SmartList? So we're taking it from let's not just run a list for the sake of seeing some data. We want to know what to do next. And if you start thinking about that, you can run lists to find exceptions. Have we created a customer this week that didn't get a zip code entered? Have a list that says customers without zip code, and you're now auditing and doing exception reporting using SmartList. Give me a list of any sales order where the margin is less than 10%, which is our requirement. You can then run a list that will give you that. Give me projects where there's been no timesheets entered. You can get as creative as you like to find exceptions, errors in your data, things that have been missed, checking on people, instead of just I need a list of all the orders for today, or all the customers, or all the purchase orders, or accounts payable. You want to find out that there's something missing or something wrong. So some of our very best lists are empty lists. So I have a list that gives me a set of criteria that says the best thing is I click on that one and it should be empty. If it's empty, I'm good. If there's data coming in, then there's something that's not right. So you've got to fit your business into what Nicole's showing you and go, well, that's something we can use internally. So that's the mindset, is, you know, SmartList as a workflow tool, and using all the restrictions in here to drive data to the right people that need to see it.
Great, yeah. Yeah, and our accountant, she actually doesn't run the main list. She has a favorite where project number equals blank. So sometimes it's empty, sometimes it's not. But that's how she does it. If it's empty, that's good, I can go on. If it's not, I gotta wait till that project gets created and then I can post. She's waiting for it to happen, which is automated. She doesn't have to do anything. She just gotta wait a few minutes. So another option we have is that one was just basically GP data. Yes, I had some extender data, but that's in my GP databases. We take it a lot further, and a lot of our day happens in CRM. So when I look at that, the CRM data a lot of times ties directly to our GP data, and we need that tied together. But as two systems, viewing that data doesn't always happen. So we use SmartList Builder a lot to either put CRM lists, and you can see we have a CRM section in our Smart View just for lists that pull data from CRM, because they got tired of going back and forth between two systems. They're like, can I get it in Smart View so that I can see it here and I don't have to go back and forth then? So we created lists that pull just CRM.
Quick interruption for you, Nicole. I noticed that you were working out of a folder called Nicole inside SmartList, and now you're talking about a folder called CRM. How did you create those, and how did they get there, and should people be creating their own folders?
Certainly. So Martin noticed I have this Nicole folder. Obviously you don't have a Nicole folder in your system. If you do, I'm sorry, I must have left it there. But what we can do, if I get to the right machine, and I'm trying to remember the version we released it in, I believe it's 2018, just the regular 2018, but I could be wrong. It could be 2018, the 18.2 or the October 2019 release, but I think it's just 2018. If you go under, you'll know real quick if you have it or not. You go under Tools, SmartList Builder. There's a new feature we added for SmartList Custom Series. That means I can create my own folders in SmartList. Now, don't just go all willy-nilly and create a bunch of different folders. You want to keep some structure to you. You want to organize it, you know, so maybe sit down with those that need SmartList and use it all the time. Figure out how do we want to organize our data. But it is nice because I don't have to put something under sales just because it dealt with invoices. If I want to expose it to the marketing team, maybe I create a folder called marketing and all of their lists go into that one. You know, when I create one for this, the support team, and they have everything they need under support. They don't have some under sales, some under project, and that type of thing. We put it where they need it. So all I
could have my own series there, Nicole, called monthly checklist or month-end checklist or something like that.
Certainly could. And you won't see a series if you don't have access to any of the lists in the series. So like if Martin logged in today, he wouldn't see the Nicole series because he doesn't have access to any of my demo lists that I created for this. So it goes away if you don't have access to any of the lists underneath it, kind of like the sales folder goes away if you don't have access to any sales lists. So you do have that option there. Obviously, don't create them called Nicole, you know, a little bit more thought into it than that. But all I had to do was create a new folder in this window and give it a description. And then in SmartList Builder, you pick the product as SmartList Builder. Instead of picking GP and picking sales or inventory or something like that, you pick SmartList Builder, and then you'll get the option of your different custom series that you've created. Prior to that feature coming out, if you pick SmartList Builder, everything just went into additional SmartList, but now we can have our own folders like that. So that was a great new feature, big requested feature. That works in SmartList and SmartView. It'll create that new series for you.
Just while we're on that, Nicole, we've got some questions, but one of them that comes up often, and it's come up again, is about naming conventions. Do you have any suggestions on SmartList naming conventions? Because I know when you pulled up that list before, we had hundreds of lists at E1. How do you suggest people should name things so they can find them and understand what they are?
You know, I don't have a great thing, and if I show you our names, I mean, we have crazy names. If I order these SmartList names, you'll see what I did. After I found a whole bunch that I didn't think we were using, they were always in my list and bothering me, so I put a Z dash in front of it. If I ever found one, somebody was asking why it was that, then I knew we were actually still using it. But my biggest thing, I guess, is don't name it too long, because of course you aren't going to see it in SmartList. Then you got to expand that side folder and to get the full name. So don't name it too long, but name it something that really makes sense for what's in the data. So if you're putting a restriction and you're restricting it to a specific year, you know, 2018 sales, not just sales for the year. You know, if it's specific to 2018 and you're not going to change it to 2019 the next year, then name it that. If you're going to change it every year, then maybe it's this year's sales. You know, put that restriction a little bit into the name, but don't get it so deep that it gets confusing either or too long to see. And then I guess I kind of like to name them similar. So it's not so much how you should go about it, but you know, we have the sales line items. Then we actually internally have a sales lines with returns and a sales lines with checks. So I've kept the naming convention the same, just putting, hey, what's the specific scenario that you're looking for on there? And when I say sales lines with returns, it basically made the returns a negative value. But we didn't want to do it to our default one. I don't think anybody actually has security to the default one anymore or uses it. They use the one with returns. I just didn't want to change it because we actually did that before we could change it, before we had that feature in SmartList Builder to modify the default list. So we have new lists with that, and I haven't gone back and redone it because everybody's got their favorites, and I really don't want to break all of those for them to change it on the default and make them change. So,
quick interruption again. We've got a couple of questions coming in on that first list you showed off. The calculated field code, what's the format of that? Is it standard SQL? What's the language you're using in there?
Sure. So what this is a case statement, and you'll actually see embedded case statements. So that's a good scenario of you can use multiple different calculations inside of one. So I have a couple case, and when you think of a case statement, it's just an if then. It is SQL syntax to a point. You can see that it's listing my field names, how GP is listing them out. So if I add them from fields, that's what they're coming in as, the brackets. You wouldn't do that in SQL. But the basis of it is a SQL syntax. We do have a knowledge base, and I'm just looking to see if I put that in the calculated in the thing. I did not. If I can get back to my machine, if you go to e1solutions.com, and just do a search. And do builder calculated fields, we'll find a article, and don't look for the manual, look for the help article, a list of functions available in Extender and SmartList Builder. So you could do functions, SmartList Builder or something like that too if you want to. And we actually have a document that walks you through, here's the syntax of them if you need it. Of course, add and subtract is a pretty easy syntax, but what is the syntax? What does this calculation mean? These are all the ones we have built in. You can actually, if you know a SQL function that works as a calculated field type function, you can actually, if you can figure out that syntax, use it as well, because we're just running a SQL query. These are just the ones we pulled in. If you have a suggestion for one you want us to pull in because you're going to use it all the time, we can look at that too. But okay. It's just
very
SQL.
good. So the answer there, I hope that helps, Andy. Yep, it's pretty much SQL syntax, but lots of helpers on that calculated field where you can just automatically click on the fields you need and grab those functions and build them. So it's designed so the average Joe like me can build them. You've got to be careful. You don't have to be a full-on SQL programmer to use that functionality. Before you jump to the next list, Nicole, a couple of quick ones. Those new folders you were creating, some of these lists, will they roll across multiple companies? And then what is the best way to give access to those new folders?
Sure. So the folder will show up. It's a system-wide thing. Everything you do in SmartList Builder, consider it a system-wide thing. You don't actually have to give access to the folders. It's all done based on the list you assign to that folder. If the user has access to that list, they'll see the folder. If they don't have any access to lists in the folder, they won't see the folder. So there's no security to those folders. It's all done at the list level and what they have access to that you've put into that folder.
Very good. All right, we'll let you carry on with the next piece.
Okay, and I was just going to show before we do, when you're looking at these calculations, don't let them scare you. Anything that's uppercase or a special character stays. Anything that's lowercase words like this date part, number, date, that's where it's looking for your input. What field do you want me to do this on? What number do you want me to add to it? That type of thing. So think of it as I just have to replace the lowercase words. Okay. The next list I want to show you is where we were combining our CRM and GP data. So we have opportunities in CRM, right? As people are talking to our partners and customers, people are saying, you know what, I want to do a trial of this. I want to more interested in SmartView. I want some information. We create those opportunities. But what happens? You go now purchase SmartView. We need to know that that opportunity is complete and we can kind of follow through that process. And sometimes we get busy, so I created a list to tell the sales team, hey, your opportunity has an invoice on it for that product, right? So if we look at this, whoever this opportunity was for, again, I'm hiding some of the customer data here, they were interested in Smart Connect. Well, it appears that back in January, or a couple weeks ago, they actually purchased Smart Connect. So that's telling Linda, hey, you know what? I can go do that follow-up, see how Smart Connect is going for them, and I can close this opportunity. And if I need to create a new one for training or anything like that, now I can do that. But it's kind of that quick way for them to know, hey, did this customer actually order it? Because they don't, can't catch every order coming into our system and stuff. So they were trying to go cross-reference everything back and forth and spending a lot of time. So we created a list that cross-references that for them based on the item in GP and the product we have in CRM. We have a common field there that I can link them back together and know that, hey, this opportunity actually purchased. I will show you that one. This one I actually used a SQL view for, so I created a SQL view on that one to pull that data together. The reason I had to use a SQL view is because when you're talking CRM data, and when I say CRM, I'm specifically talking the Microsoft CRM. I can't say it's the same for everyone, but that's what I had to do for our CRM. Is it has a different sort order in SQL. Don't let that confuse you too much if you're not a SQL person. If you are, you understand what I mean. our GP and our CRM have two different sort orders. Nothing we can change, it's just how the two products are. And so you have to do some interesting SQL. And again, don't let this confuse you if you aren't a SQL person, but just to show those that are, you have to do some collations on your fields. So I have to tell SQL, hey, ignore the sort order of this field coming from whichever database I choose. I generally do it on the CRM side, just my way of doing it, do it on that outside data, not my internal data. And when I say internal, I'm in GP, so I'm going to do it to the CRM. But you have to collate that any of the string fields to the right sort order, or to ignore the sort, I guess. So that's where we came in with that, and that's why I have a SQL view in there, because I had to write that SQL query to do that. If I try and add a CRM table into SmartList Builder as just a SQL table, it doesn't work because GP doesn't understand that sort order. So if you're trying to pull data, external data in that like that, you can as a SQL table, you can as a SQL script, but sometimes things like that in SQL just are beyond our control, and we have to work within those means. So I'm calling a different database. I also have to make sure that my permissions are set to that database. A GP user does not have access to your CRM database in SQL. My GP login doesn't even know what CRM is. So you also have to make sure that you're giving your users access to that data you're pulling in. You can use Dyn Group, which is the GP SQL group. If you want to give them access to those special permissions, you can use something different. If you want to keep it separate, that's fine. Just know that you have to give permissions. But that's where we're using that. And then again, just pulling in the fields I want. This one's a pretty basic list, no calculations. I'm not even sure if we have any summary or nope, no summary, multi-company, anything like that on there. But it's linking together that CRM data and that GP data to give me the list I need so that they can do their work. You know, a good list here is an empty list, right? Then they've all been matched. We've followed up on them. We've closed out our opportunity. That would be great, but we do have some here to work on. Okay, the third list I wanted to show you is another one getting data from CRM and GP. And the only reason I'm doing CRM and GP is it's two systems we have internally. It's two systems that I can link data to, pull them in to show you something. If you have some other system that we can get to the SQL data from GP, we can use that as well. Just keep in mind the data has to be on the same SQL server as your GP data. Okay, so this list, nothing real special about it. I am pulling in the account information from CRM. So their name, we actually put their GP customer number into our CRM system. That's how we tie the two together. Their currency that's set up in CRM, their address, that basic type of information. Then I'm also pulling that information from GP. Okay. Now, why would I do that? Well, what happens if your addresses don't match? Martin talked about looking for blank zip codes. Well, I can look for blank ones, but you can see this first record here. The address in CRM does not match my address in GP. Are you sending the invoice off of the address in CRM or the address in GP? You know, my salesperson entered it in CRM, but when I send the invoice, I use GP. So I need to make sure those addresses match. So I can use a list and I can have some different filter criteria set up on here. So we could do something to the sort of, let's just do that postal code where my CRM postal code does not equal my GP zip. I should name them the same thing. So it does not equal. So where the postal code in CRM does not equal the zip in GP. See, and that's where I run into, I just tried to compare. And so some of that you can't do because it now says you tried to compare two string fields and one's this sort order and one's this sort order. So there's little things like that we can't do. And you can see that coming into play there. So I guess I should have picked a better field. If I'd have done an integer field, we wouldn't have erred. And you go, well, postal code should be an integer field, but it's not because of international code.
I think you get what Nicole's doing here, and that's taking SmartList Builder beyond just GP data. We're pulling in data from another system on the network, being able to compare it, doing some really fancy stuff there to get the data you need to save a huge amount of time from people printing two different reports, comparing data, comparing lists. Makes a really, really big difference. So keep that in mind when you're building lists, going, how do we do that? Now, one of the tricks there is obviously, we're on your server environments, and so you're connecting two things that you can access locally. The limitation there is that we can't go and get data from completely external systems that are on our network, SQL servers that are on Azure or in the cloud or cloud apps. And that's why we've been building our PopDoc tool. And the third webinar in this series will cover PopDoc as a solution, which will talk about how you do that for any data, build these lists across multiple types of data from multiple types of systems, and gives you way more power there. So if that's the stuff you like and you see that as exciting, make sure you get onto that PopDoc webinar. That's going to be really fun. Back to you, Nicole.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to show you another way to use calculations. We think of calculated fields, I'm adding things, I'm figuring out the difference between things, stuff like that. We saw a case statement where we were doing an if-then scenario. If it's this, I want to do this. If it's this, I want to do this. Well, this one, if I want to compare those address fields, could I create one string field that puts the address all together for GP and puts the address all together for CRM, and then it's one field I'm comparing, and as long as they're put together the same way, if it doesn't match, something in that address is wrong, and then I can go look at the detail so that I don't have to have so many different comparisons, one for each of the 7 different fields. So we can use those calculations to add fields together as well. So you can see here I did an rtrim just to take off any spaces at the end of any of the fields so that I get the same set of data out of both of them, and my CRM would do the same thing. And I'm just adding them all together. Does the field have to look pretty? No, you can put commas in here. If I wanted to put a space in here, I could do a space and then add that in, that type of stuff. But I didn't care about that. I wasn't using it for data read. I was using it to find those where there's differences. So I just add them all together, and then I can compare those two fields and find out where the addresses truly are different, not just zips, not just countries, the address as a whole. I can find that difference there. So just another way to think about it. Do I add them together? We see that a lot in payroll. You have first name, last name, add them together, have a full name. Little things like that that get annoying when you want to sort things, but let's just use the calculations to make it a little bit easier. Another way to think of using SmartList Builder, we don't use it internally because, to be honest with you, internally we have 2 people that use GP, me being the admin of GP, and then our accountant. But I want you to think about it where's my slide? Let me look at which number it is, 13. Is a user password expiration theory. You're an IT person, you don't need to see the GP data. You don't care about the GP data so much. Use it to do things to look at, say, a user passwords. If you've set up your passwords in GP to expire, you can use it to find out when somebody is close to expiration. Or if they did expire and maybe they're just not logging into GP anymore, well, then maybe we should just remove them. Why aren't they using GP? We can look at that. But just another idea, I can set up a list to do that kind of thing. This one, I did actually include the XML import for it in the slide deck, so it's embedded in this slide when you get that this afternoon. If you want to use that one, it does go pull some information out of SQL, so you will have to have the security set up for the SQL portion that it pulls in, because we are going and looking at the login in SQL to find that expiration. GP isn't storing that. So, but just another way to think about it, not even anything to do with sales or projects or anything like that, is I'm an IT person. How can I use this to benefit me? Okay, and that's the list I had set up to show you today. So I just want to talk through some other different features that you may or may not be aware of that are in GP. First one, I kind of like it. This one's going to be available in SmartList for you, because SmartView does our totaling at the bottom. SmartList doesn't have any feature to do totaling. So and I should have wrote down when we added all these features. It's either 18 or 18.2. I can look them all up at the end here. If you pull up a list in SmartList, any list, doesn't have to be a SmartList Builder built one, any list, and then go to in SmartList, go to additional, and then there's a totals. What it's going to show you is for any integer field on your list, it will total it. So like year is a string, but period is an integer. So it picked up period. That doesn't mean anything to me, but I can ignore that. But I get a total for my debits and credits. Okay. So that's a great way to see those totals for your list. Now keep in mind, I'm in a Fabricam company here, and I'm only displaying 1,000 records, so that's why my debits and credits are so off. But we do have that totals window. It'll work on any list you have in SmartList. And like I said, I think it's 2018 is when that came out. I will show you where to find all the new features here. And why don't I just show you that now? If we go back out to the E1 Solutions site, and you go to downloads, and SmartList Builder, we also post blogs every time we do a release with any new features or fixes that are in it. But we put a release notes out here that will show you the features and fix list in each release, as well as if you look at the online manual, we post an enhancements section that will show you those features. And then if there is more detail on them, we needed to document it more for you, it'll link you back to the section of the manual that talks about that feature for you. So those are always on here. Like I said, we post a blog on it every time we do one as well, so we can find
couple of questions coming in, Nicole, on regular SmartList, and I think we touched on this last week, but I think it's worth doing again, which is on multi-company and summaries. So two different topics there, but if you want to just step us through, you'll show us those and explain what they do.
Yep, I'm just gonna create a new list here. Okay, I don't have data in multiple companies here, but it'll work. Let's just do. I'm just gonna pull in the year-to-date. Why? Guess I already have one. We'll just go with what's here. I have one called test. Pick some fields. So what Martin's asking about is, if I go to options and choose summary, we have two options here. One for summary SmartList and one for multi-company. We'll do multi-company first. If I create this list and I don't check multi-company, when I run it, I get Fabricam data because I'm logged into Fabricam. But if I come in here and check it, and I can check whichever companies, if you have 20 of them, you can check 3 of them, whatever you want to include in this list. So by checking both companies, it's going to include the data that's available in the list setup for those companies. So if I save that and I save it, we're not going to know it's pulling from multiple companies, but it does. Now, again, I don't have data in that other company to show that, but this pulled from Fabricam. If it still had records before it reaches whatever limit, so that 1,000 record limit by default, or if you change that, it pulls from Fabricam until it reaches the limit, or it reaches the end of Fabricam, and then it goes to the next company and keeps pulling data. So you can see I only got 304 records. So if there was data in the next company, it would have went there and got the records. But how do I tell which company it's calling from? If I go back and modify it and create a calculation, so I'll add one, just call it company or whatever you want to call it. It's a string field type. There are special fields here of company ID or company name. So whichever one you want. Do you want it to say 2, 1, which are my database names, or the Fabricam Inc., and I don't remember what I named the other company. So I'll do company name. That's all you have to do. Then just turn it on and put it wherever you want to in the list of order of columns. And now you can see it's going to tell me which company that record came from. So you can create that multi-company report that pulls data from multiple companies and brings it into one. No matter which company you log into, as long as it's one of them set up in that multi-company list, it will pull data from all 3 companies. If it's not one of the ones marked in that list, it's not going to pull that company's data. It will pull the companies you have marked. So if I log into Nicole's ABC company, which we didn't mark, it would pull data from Fabricam and the one company which we did mark. It wouldn't pull ABC's data. So keep that in mind. It's only going to pull what it's marked there, no matter which company you log into. So that is multi-company. The summary option is used to summarize the data up. So I picked some bad fields. I probably should have picked, let's pick a couple others here. This isn't the best table to have either. Well, we'll just do, let me see what's in those. Okay. I want to summarize this by the contact person, right? Don't ask me why I would do that, but we're going to do it. I want to know how many items were ordered by that contact person. And let's pick some different ones here. So I can go into summary here, turn it on. I'm going to turn off multi-company just to not confuse us with the company name and stuff, because it doesn't summarize as much when you have multi-company on, because it summarizes per company as well. But so now let's go find that contact person name. Okay, there it is. So if I double click, by default it's going to count when I summarize, because it's a string field. It's going to count how many records got rolled up into that one record. That's what I want to group by though. So I'm going to group by that, and I will just show you what happens. It's going to count any string fields. It's going to sum any integer fields. So you can see we had a lot more records. Now we only have 43. So a lot of these are ones. If I sort it, so Mary Wiest has 40 records rolled up. The item sequence number got summed up. Doesn't make sense in this scenario, right? The item number doesn't make sense in this scenario. So I might have more of the company that Mary works for, or different things like that. But we can also come in here and maybe add another grouping. Maybe I need to think about that, and I should group by the SOP type as well, or the item number, something to that effect.
And what I'm going to do.
So you can group by the different fields that you need. And then if there's fields, you know, if the city is always the same, I can come in here and just say, you know what, give me the maximum. So a good example of that is if I group by the customer number, their customer name is the same for that customer number no matter which record it is. So pick the maximum or the minimum for that customer name, and it's always going to display the name instead of the count of 40. So if you want it to display the actual name, as long as it's always the same for all the records got rolled up, maximum or minimum will work. I don't know that city is always going to be the same for Mary Wiest, but we'll try it. But by picking maximum, you can see I actually get a nice name instead of that count. But now I group by item number and contact person. So now I get a lot more records for Bob, and it's not rolling up. Is there anybody getting rolled up? So you can see here, some of them still get rolled up. Beth Carr has 5 invoices that have that item on there, or 3 invoices that have that item on there. So that's what the summary is going to do, is kind of summarize it. Think of it in the same terms of you have account summary and account transactions. The summary is built using that summary option in SmartList Builder, is how you would think about that. The transaction one is all the detail I would have had if I hadn't checked that checkbox.
All right, Nicole, we've got a couple of questions and we've got 9 minutes left, so we better address a couple of them.
Sure.
Jose's wanting to, I know the answer is yes, but wanting to create SmartList from a SQL view. And he's created a view but cannot seem to access it from SmartList Builder. What's the trick there and how should he do that?
Sure. So what he's saying is he has a SQL view in his databases on his GP server that isn't GP data necessarily, or maybe it is, but he's pulling a bunch of stuff together. So he's got a SQL view but can't see it in SmartList Builder when you go to add it. And where you're adding it is SQL Server table, and not seeing it here. I only see one. There are hundreds in the GP databases, so I should see more. Why don't I see them? We have to actually give security to those. So under SmartList Builder, there is security and then SQL table security. And in here, you can see I only saw the 2 database there. I have other ones. I just didn't give access to them. So first thing you have to do is give access to the database, and then either the tables or views that you want to have access to. So I can mark those 4 as what I want once I say okay. And now keep in mind, by doing this, anybody who has access to SmartList Builder now got access to add those 4 tables. So now if I come in here, you can see those extra views there. So you do need to go into that SQL table security window and mark the new view that you've created so that it is available for SmartList Builder to use.
Very good. Jose worked it out. He's got it sorted now. So it's good to see him building stuff on the fly.
Good.
Another question for you, Nicole, is back to go-tos and some of those functions. First question, and maybe just talk to it, but is deciding which fields you need to pass through as parameters and how to decide which ones. Secondly, follow-up question is there a way to build a summary list and then drill down to the detail of that list using a go-to? And I know the answer to both of those is yes, but I'll throw that to you.
Okay. So I'm just going to pull in a list here so we have something. So let's do customers, because I'm going to use this for the next question too. So if I was going to create a go-to to a window, not using the built-in ones, but just a window open form, and I'm just going to use the customer maintenance window just for my example because I know it. When I'm thinking about this window, what do I have to enter in this window to get the data to populate with the record the way I want it to populate? Okay, so when I run that go-to and I want it to populate, what do I have to enter to get it to do that? Well, if I use the window manually, And if you know your customers, is that not right? One more zero. I have to enter that customer ID. So what I do is I go to the window, what do I physically have to enter and do to get it to populate that window? So I had to enter the customer ID and I had to tab off of the field. Okay, so that tells me I have to enter data into the customer ID, or it might be called customer number in the back end, and I have to run the field script when I get to that go to. So if we come back here in our go to, oops. Now some windows are going to have more than one field that you have to enter in, so you have to take that into account. Some windows have checkboxes or redisplay buttons. If you have to hit the redisplay button, you have to tell the go to run the redisplay button. Otherwise, you're going to have to manually hit it when you go there. But you will see in there that there is a redisplay button. We can run a script on that. So set a field value, run a field script. That's what I want to do, right? I want to put the data in the field. I want to run the script after I tab. So if you think of it as I have to tab, that's the run field script. And then what do I have to do? I have to populate the customer number with what data from your specific list. So we'll call it customer name or number. And that's what I would have to do for that go to. So just go to the window. What do you physically have to enter in to get it to work? If it's a window you can't enter anything into, like it's an inquiry window, you flicked it off of something else and it's just populated for you, we can't get to that window by default. It might be a built-in one on some of those inquiries. We've built them in, hard-coded them in for you, but there is some third-party ones as well, and we just can't get to those. You have to go to the window you opened it from, and then maybe we can have our go-to click the button you click to get into that window, depending on how it works. But when I say you have to click the button, you would use the run field script, and you would pick that button. This one doesn't have one. But like the redisplay button, you would see L redisplay button or something to that effect. You know, it'll say redisplay button. So I can run a field script on that button and that pushes the button.
Then to drilling down to a smart list.
Yep, so then you can use the open smart list option as a go-to type that I add here. And we'll go from our customers to our sales transactions.
And we might run out of time, so maybe just talk us through that screen.
Okay, but you just do that, and then you just have to link the customer number from your list to the customer number in that list. And that's all I have to do. And now when I click on a customer in my customer list, it will drill down to my sales transaction list for that specific customer.
And that's very cool. Do you want to actually go back one step and just show us the list of options for go-tos? I want to just pull that up because one of the most underutilized features in GP and SmartList Builder is this. It lets you build your own workflow. So you drive everything from a SmartList, people find what they need to do. From there, they can do all sorts of things. So opening screens, drilling down to SmartList, linking to a website. We've got customers that do that and pass the shipping number to FedEx to pull up that FedEx screen and track where that shipment is at. If you've got programmers, you can execute procedures and do all sorts of other things in there. So it's a lot of power in SmartList go-tos for you driving how you navigate, how your team navigates Dynamics GP. It's a lot of fun to be had there. Now we're reaching our full hour. Let me just check for last questions. We've had a whole bunch come in, and thank you for all those that have contributed. There is one on, and a couple of questions regarding Smart View, Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just find these ones. So Smart View is something that's come up a few times. Now, it is a separate product from SmartList. It's really our replacement of SmartList, but we'll work with SmartList Builder. So anything you build will be available inside Smart View. What's so cool about Smart View is it eliminates all the frustrations you might have with SmartList, even though you love it. Firstly, it runs way faster. So it returns the data. If you're sick of standing there having too many coffees every day because you've got to wait for your list to run, SmartView solves that problem. It makes it much easier to add columns, filter, those sorts of things. And it's available outside of GP. So you can give users in your company access to SmartView, even though they're not a GP user, and have access to that. So there's some key things there with SmartView. The question was, we have SmartLists. I think we touched on this. SmartLists created, but those SmartLists aren't coming up in SmartView. Is there a trick, Nicole, to having a list that doesn't appear for you in SmartView, or is there a security component to that?
SmartView has its own security, but for the list portion, so the sales transaction list, if I see it in SmartList and I don't see it in SmartView, my guess would be it might have been built in SmartList Designer or another third-party tool that put it there, or it comes from a third party that builds their own SmartList and puts them in your system. We don't have those third parties, if they didn't build it to go into SmartView, we don't have that there. So if it's built, if it's default to SmartList or it's built in SmartList Builder, it will always show up in both. But if it's not a security thing, because if you grant access to the list for SmartList, you'll see it in SmartView. It's more of it's custom coming from some other product outside of the core GP or SmartList Builder. And if it is core, email me and we'll figure it out.
Very good. So I think that wraps up. We've got some people asking for specific sessions coming up on specific topics, like payroll and HR. There was another one on field service stuff. And we certainly may do that. We'll look at those. What you've got to look at is taking the concepts here and applying them to your need. We don't know what your business needs. Neither did the guy that built SmartList in the first place. That's why SmartList Builder exists. So you can take the concepts here and say, hey, I need this to suit our business. And so you've got to put your creative hat on to apply it. Now, if you want to specifically engage Nicole and you've got some problems that you haven't been able to solve, or some ideas, and you want some expertise, Nicole's available for hire, and she can certainly engage with you. Or if you've got some things that you've seen today that you go, I know I could do that now, but you don't have time, you're busy, you've got a real job, and you need to attend to that, you're welcome to come to E1, come to us and say, hey, we need some help. Can we engage Nicole for a few days to come and help build all these lists and get them set up for us? We're more than happy to assist. So yeah, absolutely, we will do that with you.
And
all right, at that point, I think we're pretty much done. For those asking, we will send out a link to today's webinar to everybody. So everybody that's registered. There was a few people asking earlier, are we the only people on here? We had over 130 people on the webinar today, so there was lots of people, hence lots of questions. But yeah, glad to have you on. You will all get a link to the webinar, everybody that registered, so you can review it as many times as you like and go step by step through what Nicole's doing. And look out for our invites to the next webinar in this series, which is going to be looking at all the things we've done, but how to do it for the rest of your data, not just for GP, and how to move data around and get it to the right place so the right people are more efficient than they were before. So a huge thank you to Nicole for joining us today. Thanks for everybody that joined. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll talk to you soon.